In the 1960s, if you wanted to see the world, you didn't just book a flight. You entered a dream. You walked through the curving, futuristic halls of the TWA Flight Center in New York. You were greeted by attendants in designer uniforms, served five-course meals at 30,000 feet, and swept across oceans in a silver bird called the Constellation. World Airlines, TWA, wasn't just a carrier. It was the unofficial flag of the United States. It was the playground of billionaires like Howard Hughes and the pioneer of the jet age. It was the airline of Hollywood, the airline of innovation, and for decades, the world's most glamorous way to fly. But today, TWA is a memory. Its hubs are quiet, its logo has vanished, and its story has become a cautionary tale of corporate raids, crushing debt, and a world that simply moved too fast for a legend to keep up. How did the airline of the stars fall so far? Was it a victim of bad luck, or was its fate sealed by the very men who tried to save it? TWA's story begins in 1930, but its roots reach back to the Wild West of aviation. It was born from a merger of Western Air Express and Transcontinental Air Transport, TAT. TAT had a secret weapon. They had hired the most famous man on Earth, Charles Lindbergh, to survey their routes. In those days, flying coast to coast was an endurance test. It involved a rail-air system, where passengers took trains at night and planes during the day. It took 48 hours. But the new company, Transcontinental and Western Air, T&W, wanted more. They wanted a single, all-air route that would change the map of America forever. TWA became the engine of progress. When they couldn't find a plane that met their standards, they commissioned one. This led to the birth of the Douglas DC series, culminating in the DC-3, the plane that finally made passenger flight profitable. By the late 1930s, TWA was the cutting edge, and then it caught the eye of a man who loved speed more than life itself. In 1939, billionaire Howard Hughes quietly began buying stock in TWA. By the time the board realized what was happening, the eccentric genius owned the airline. Hughes didn't want a company, he wanted a laboratory. He pushed engineers to build the Connie, the Lockheed Constellation. With its triple tail and pressurized cabin, it was the first plane that could fly above the weather. It was faster, sleeker, and more beautiful than anything the competition had. During World War II, TWA's expertise was drafted into the war effort, flying thousands of missions for the Air Transport Command. When the war ended, Hughes looked toward the horizon. He changed the name from Transcontinental and Western to World Airlines. TWA became one of the only two U.S. airlines allowed to fly international routes, alongside Pan Am. The rivalry between the two was legendary. Pan Am was the establishment, but TWA was the innovator. They were the first to show in-flight movies, the first to offer ambassador-class service, and the first to make every passenger feel like a VIP. The 1960s were TWA's zenith. In 1962, they opened the TWA Flight Center at JFK. It was a cathedral of the jet age. Inside, the world felt optimistic, wealthy, and boundless. Hughes, however, had become a liability. His erratic behavior and refusal to sign off on jet purchases nearly bankrupted the company. In 1961, after a bitter legal battle, TWA's management forced Hughes out.
Free from Hughes, TWA surged. They embraced the jet age with the Boeing 707 and later the massive 747 jumbo jet. In 1969, they did the unthinkable. They surpassed Pan Am as the #1 transatlantic carrier. TWA was the king of the Atlantic. They diversified, buying Hilton International and Century 21. They were a global conglomerate. Their hub in Kansas City was supposed to be the center of the world. To the public, TWA was invincible. But behind the glamour, the clouds were gathering. The 1970s brought two hammers down on TWA, the oil crisis and the 1978 Airline Deregulation Act. Suddenly, the government wasn't protecting routes or prices. TWA, with its high labor costs and aging fleet of massive planes, was suddenly vulnerable to nimble, low-cost startups. In 1985, TWA was targeted by corporate raider Carl Icahn. Icahn won a brutal takeover battle, but his victory was the airline's defeat. To pay for the acquisition, he saddled TWA with enormous debt. He sold off the airline's most valuable assets, including its crown jewel, the London Heathrow routes, to rival American Airlines. Then came the tragedy of July 17, 1996. TWA 800 exploded off the coast of Long Island, killing all 230 on board. While the NTSB eventually ruled it a mechanical failure, the blow to TWA's reputation was fatal. The airline was bleeding cash and had no way to buy the new, fuel-efficient planes it needed to compete. By 2001, TWA was a shadow of itself. It had entered bankruptcy 3 times. On April 9, 2001, the inevitable happened. American Airlines purchased TWA's remaining assets. On December 1, 2001, Flight 220 and MD-80 touched down in St. Louis. It was the last official TWA flight. After 75 years, the twin globes stopped spinning. Did TWA fail? In a financial sense, yes. It was outmaneuvered by deregulation, drained by corporate greed, and haunted by tragedy. But in the history of human movement, TWA remains a triumph. It taught us that travel could be an art form. It gave us the architecture of Saarinen and the ambition of Lindbergh. Today, you can visit that hotel at JFK, sit in a restored Connie, and sip a cocktail in a room that looks like 1962. TWA is gone, but its spirit, the belief that the world is a small, beautiful place waiting to be discovered, still flies in every jet that crosses the Atlantic tonight.